Hi everyone, I'm Chifei Fan. Many of you may be familiar with this video.
台湾有事、それは日本有事です。すなわち日米同盟の有事でもあります。
Around 2 years ago, Japan's ex-Prime Minister Shinzo Abe publicly stated, "A Taiwan emergency is a Japanese emergency." A lot of Taiwanese people interpreted this as meaning Japan would definitely intervene if Taiwan were attacked. Some were even moved to tears by the statement. Chotomate, is this really what he meant? First off, when the late Shinzo Abe said this, he was no longer Prime Minister of Japan. He wasn't even in the cabinet. He was just a regular member of parliament. So what he said was not the official stance of the Japanese government. Secondly, what exactly did he mean by emergency? The emergency include being harassed by Chinese military aircraft or incursions into our territory by the Chinese Coast Guard. How about severing our undersea internet cables? Or was Abe suggesting it's only an emergency once China has flattened Taiwan into a pancake with missiles? If that's what he meant, then he might as well have said nothing at all. Also, I should mention that the Japanese characters Abe used, yuji, are the same characters in the Mandarin as 有事. 有事 in Mandarin basically means trouble or incident. So for Taiwanese people, this sounds like they will be there for us when we need help. But yuji in Japanese is more like emergency. So Taiwan yuji to Japanese ears might sound more like Taiwan and China are on the brink of war. The question is, if there is a real emergency in the Taiwan Strait, would Japan get involved? During the World War II, Japan fought with the Axis powers against the Allied powers led by the UK, Russia, and America. After the war, the United States guided Japan in writing their post-war constitution, with the most famous article being Article 9, the No-War Clause. This explicitly states that Japan renounces the right to wage war or use force to settle international disputes forever. Japan can never start a fight. They can't even come to someone's aid if they feel injustice is being done. Japan's self-defense forces are only allowed to defend their territory if they are directly attacked. So if Taiwan is attacked, can Japan send troops to help? Today, let's take a closer look at our sister country, Japan. Just like Taiwan, Japan frequently gets harassed by Chinese military aircraft and vessels. In fact, since 2013, Chinese military planes have entered Japan's southwestern airspace more than 700 times each year. Chinese Coast Guard ships also frequently trespass into the waters around the Senkaku Islands, known as the Diaoyutai Islands in China. And the Chinese aircraft carrier Shandong has even conducted drills near Miyako Islands in Okinawa. Obviously, it's very annoying for the Japanese to have Chinese military craft constantly lurking in their backyard. But something even more worrisome for Japan is energy security. Japan imports approximately 90% of its crude oil, as well as a large percentage of its liquefied natural gas and coal. Around 85 to 90% of the oil and 33% of the natural gas Japan imports must travel through the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. So if there were a conflict in the Taiwan Strait resulting in a blockade of nearby waters, this route would become impossible. Can Japan just take a detour and go east through the Pacific, bypassing Taiwan? Of course it can, but it would cost a lot more. With completely different maritime conditions, they would have to redesign their logistics, supply chain arrangements, and cost structures. That's why they use the current route, because it's the most efficient. Then there is Taiwan's semiconductor industry. Now we all know that if Taiwan's high-end chip supply gets interrupted, it could mean serious trouble. But just how serious? Consider Japan's most important industry, the automotive industry. It contributes 2.9% to Japan's GDP and 13.9% to its manufacturing GDP, employing up to 5.5 million individuals. This industry heavily depends on Taiwan's microcontrollers and chips. Any disruption in Taiwan's chip supply could lead to production delays and halts in the auto sector, impacting the entire supply chain. And what about Japan's second most important industry, consumer electronics? Whether it's smartphones, tablets, computers, washing machine, even this banana phone, they all require Taiwanese chips. The impacts extend beyond manufacturing to Japan's R&D sector. Many cutting-edge products and innovative solutions rely on the latest semiconductor technology. And we are just scratching the surface. I think I will skip topics like investor confidence and stock market crashes for the time being. So Japan knows all too well that without semiconductors, it has no economy. To address this, Japan has not only rebooted its own investments in the semiconductors, but has also worked with TSMC to set up factories in Japan to mitigate geopolitical risks to the supply chain. That's why we see TSMC factories sprouting up in Kumamoto. But will this solve all their chip-related worries? No way. The Kumamoto plant will produce about 660,000 wafers per year, which can supply around 260,000 new cars. But Japan produced approximately 7.77 million new light vehicles in 2023. So it's not even close to enough. And I haven't accounted for smartphones, tablets, and computers. The bottom line is, Japan still needs to import chips from Taiwan. And if a conflict breaks out in the Taiwan Strait, all the chips would be poof, gone. Sorry, Japan. Not only do you have to worry about intruders in your backyard, but also about your friendly neighbor Taiwan getting disappeared. Yes, that's because of Article 9, the No War Clause. We are not allowed to deploy troops or expand our military. The only thing we can do is worry, unless we get creative. That's why in 2015, Japan reinterpreted Article 9 of its constitution to allow for the right of collective self-defense. This put more options on the table. What is the right of collective self-defense? Well, the right of individual self-defense is easy. If you hit me, I can hit you back in self-defense. The right of collective self-defense is like this. Imagine you and I are good friends and you get beaten up. You want to retaliate. So you say, hey pal, let's go beat up the asshole together. That's collective self-defense. However, if you take the Ukraine war as an example, when Ukraine was attacked by Russia, Japan couldn't just suddenly go, hey Ukraine, let's be BFF so we can go fight Russia together. Why? Because they are not really BFF. If you can just decide who is BFF anytime, this could easily lead to a situation where everyone pretends to be BFFs, just so they can get in on the action and the whole thing becomes a free-for-all. Countries need to be allies first to employ the right of collective self-defense. As of right now, Japan's only official ally in the world is the United States. Thanks to the 1960 Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security, this means that Japan's interpreted the right of collective self-defense is applicable only if the United States is attacked or if the United States asks for help from Japan in a conflict. Can Japan broaden its circle of allies?
我们对日本的合理的期待，我觉得我们要务实面一点来讲啊。那么我们可以把它分为战前跟战后。在平时的情况，我们希望日本的这个战略清晰性会提高一点。他真的愿意，如果说台海发生冲突，美国介入，那么他也会介入，基于美日军事同盟条约，就它的战略清晰性提高。那战略清晰性提高，但只是一个政策诠释了。那当然我们可以期待，就是在这个战略清晰性的话，他也愿意促成一些美日台三方面的一些协调沟通的这个机制。我觉得这是已经是最大的 可以说合理的期待，再多的期待是不行的。那单独的这个防卫力的方面来讲，它当然可以协助我们也增强一下我们这些这个基础设施的或者这个燃料啊，或者这些增强这些能力啊，当然是可以期盼啦。这大概是战前了。到了战时的时候，我是觉得其实不需要期盼，所有的关键的影响都在美日军事同盟了。因为日本的想法就是说，台湾有事其实跟日本是没有关系的，但是台湾如果有事，美国决定要来协助台湾，那就牵涉到美国、日本相互之间的同盟的关系了。
In fact, Japan is currently in discussions with several nations. The most notable effort led by the United States is for Japan to join AUKUS, which will align it with the UK and Australia in a strategic pact. There are also ongoing talks with the Philippines, France, Canada, India, and Germany for different levels of cooperation. Japan has been keeping itself busy stepping up its game, right? But exercising the right of collective self-defense isn't as straightforward as it seems. Japan's updated security laws outline 3 levels of situations that are relevant if a crisis breaks out in the Taiwan Strait. The lowest level is situation with significant impact. In this case, Japan is allowed to provide logistical support to the United States, such as ammunition and fuel, but cannot deploy troops. The second level, situations threatening Japan's survival, covers attacks on countries vital to Japan's survival. Here, Japan can use collective self-defense to aid the US military. The third level, situations involving armed attacks, refers to direct attack on Japan or US military bases in Japan. In this case, Japan can exercise its right of individual self-defense and retaliate. Okay, so up until now, doesn't it feel like Japan can assist Taiwan only if the US military is already involved? Also, there's another issue. The US utilizing its military bases in Japan to deal with the conflict in the Taiwan Strait might be problematic. Problematic, you say? Isn't it expected that the US would use its Japanese bases in a conflict involving Taiwan? Even in simulations of a Taiwan Strait crisis conducted by the US think tank CSIS, they assumed that the Japanese government would allow the US to use its bases there. But the assumption might be wrong. The purpose of US military bases in Japan is to safeguard Japan's security, not to deal with the affairs of a third party. It would be like hiring a bodyguard to live at your house, and one day he tells you that your neighbor is being attacked by bandits and needs help, so he starts shooting at the bandits from your window. What's the problem with that? First, the bodyguard lives in your house to protect you, not someone else. Second, if the bodyguard shoots at the bandits from your window, what if the bandits shoot back? Doesn't that put your house in danger? If you stand by and do nothing, your house might be safer. This is the dilemma that Japan faces now. If they allow the US military to use its bases there, China could see Japan as an enemy and start firing missiles at them. If they don't allow the US military to use its bases, this could weaken the US military capacity to assist in the Taiwan Strait conflict, while also undermining the Japan and US alliance.
那这种同盟的关系又有分2种，一种就是美国不用日本的基地，那么日本最多大概做一些后勤啊或者补给的资源啊。还有一种状况就是美国要用到日本的基地，那美国要用到日本的美军基地，那很可能中国会去攻击的日本的这个基地。那碰了这样子的话，那就是变成一个直接攻击的影响的事情了。
So what can they do? Japan doesn't have an answer, and of course neither do I. But at least Japan's already doing a few things to address the situation. First, Japan is increasing its strategic oil reserves. Japan's oil reserves can now last up to 237 days. So theoretically, if the Taiwan Strait were closed and oil couldn't come in, Japan could sustain itself for more than half a year. For comparison, Taiwan's strategic oil reserves could last about 145 days. Additionally, Japan is striving to diversify its energy and increase its self-sufficiency rate. What does that mean? It means it won't rely solely on imported oil and natural gas, but will also utilize domestically produced renewable energy, such as offshore wind power. They have even set a target for their self-defense forces to use 100% renewable energy by 2030. Second, Japan has expanded its military deployments. In recent years, Japan's self-defense forces have accelerated their deployments in Okinawa, known as the Southwest Shift. Southwest refers to the Southwest Islands of Japan, which are the islands between Kyushu and Taiwan. You see, in the past, Japan's biggest threat has always been Russia. Wait a second, don't you mean North Korea? Nope. Although North Korea often launches missiles in Japan's direction, they are a smaller threat because South Korea and the US military are positioned between Japan and North Korea. Russia and Japan, on the other hand, have disputed territory in the Kuril Islands north of Japan. Russia has actually deployed troops and held military drills there, and Japan has always maintained substantial defenses on Hokkaido. Anyway, since the Ukraine war, Russia's military has declined significantly in its strength. That's why Japan plans to transfer its forces to the Southwest Islands and strengthen its military presence there. An ex-army general from the self-defense forces once said, if something happens in the Taiwan Strait, China's battlefield would presumably include Yonaguni, Ishigaki, and Senkaku Islands. That's because for China to extend its power to the Pacific Ocean, it has to pass through these Southwest Islands. If China invades Taiwan, it has to block the waters around Taiwan to gain maritime superiority. Thus, the Southwest Islands are projected to be a key battlefield for the PLA, and the US and Japan seeks to strengthen its defenses there. In 2016, Japan stationed troops on Yonaguni Island, in 2019, Miyako Island, and in 2023, on Ishigaki Island. These three islands are right next to Taiwan. It's only about 110 kilometers from Yonaguni to Yilan. With its military now stationed on islands near Taiwan and the focus on anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles, it's pretty obvious who Japan's defenses are aimed at, don't you think? Next on their agenda is enhancing their counterattack capabilities. In December 2022, the Japanese government announced a new version of its national security strategy documents, outlining Japan's security strategy for the coming decade. In addition to stating explicitly that China is their most significant, unprecedented strategic challenge, the documents also lay out plans to independently develop and produce three types of weapons: long-range cruise missiles, anti-ship missiles, and hypervelocity guiding projectile. In the future, Japan hopes that the range of its long-range cruise missiles will increase to 1,500 kilometers and the range of its hypervelocity glide missiles to 3,000 kilometers. The devil is in the details here. Between 1,500 to 3,000 kilometers is significantly greater than the direct distance between Japan and the Chinese mainland, which is approximately 800 kilometers. It's even further than the distance from Japan's Sasebo Naval Base to China's military headquarters in Beijing, Zhongnanhai. What this means is that for Japan, national defense now extends beyond protecting its own home and garden. All this marks a drastic shift in Japan's defense strategy. In the past, Japan and the United States used the model of Japan as the shield and the United States as the spear. Japan focused on defense, protecting itself, while the United States focused on offense, outward attack capabilities. However, in recent years, the United States has been pressing its European and Asian allies to take on more responsibility for defending their own territories. Japan realized it cannot rely solely on the United States and needs to operate as a spear on its own. So it shifted to developing the ability to attack enemy bases. If Japan is threatened, it must have the ability to swiftly destroy military targets on enemy territory. The capability to attack key enemy cities is a crucial bargaining chip. After all, the Taiwan Strait and the East China Sea are vital lifelines for Japan's energy imports. If China is going to use these routes as leverage against Japan, Japan needs to have leverage of its own to respond. Honestly, these two initiatives by Japan could be seen as a form of rearmament after World War II, and this is bound to trigger some parties, especially China. After all, Japan already said officially that China is their most significant and unprecedented strategic challenge. Japan has positioned its military in places where China likes to putter around conducting military exercises. All these actions are directed squarely at China. Yet, the most triggered party in all of this is not China, nor is it America, South Korea, or Taiwan. It's Japan itself. According to a 2022 survey, while a solid 76% of Japanese people view the Taiwanese as good friends, a whopping 74.2% oppose Japan's military involvement in defending Taiwan. I'm not surprised. For starters, nobody likes war, and especially not sending our own people to fight in a foreign land. Secondly, pacifism has firmly taken root in Japanese culture after World War II. The first sentence of Article 9 states, "The Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation and the threat or use of forces as means of settling international disputes." Japan is also the only country in the world to have experienced a nuclear attack. The trauma from that creates a powerful aversion to war. Lastly, when the Kishida cabinet announced an increase in defense spending to 2% of GDP, it also proposed tax hikes to cover the costs. Asking citizens to contribute financially to military buildup naturally leads to resentment. We have covered a lot of ground today on how Japan views the situation in Taiwan Strait and how it plans to respond. In my opinion, the Japanese government made great strides, not only by amending laws to enhance the capabilities of the self-defense forces for potential scenarios in the Taiwan Strait, but also by actively seeking foreign partners to collectively confront and deter adversaries. However, Japan also faces internal challenges. Law can be amended, but how they are implemented still depends on the political decisions of leaders. Will Japan's politicians take a firm stance during a real military escalation? The answer could have a critical impact on the situation in the Taiwan Strait. If you find this video helpful, please leave a comment and let us know your thoughts. If you are in a hurry, you can always give us a like. Most importantly, please help share this video and get the word out there. Finally, if you feel like supporting us, please do. More information can be found in the video description. 2027 is coming. Let's mobilize together. See you next time. This video is in collaboration with TaiwanPlus.